This is QUICKSHIFT Lightning Storm. A lot of you guys have been requesting my take on this build, so I spent a couple days tweaking it to find the right balance. I first started with Grizzly Rage and I decided I didn't like it as much. I also played around with a lot of different aspects and I think I found the ones that I prefer the most. As you can see, this can clear Lilith as well as tier 100 dungeons. But the real strength of Lightning Storm is in the AoE clear, and I'd recommend using this with a team and going ham on the AoE. Ironically, this would pair really nicely with a perfect Stormclaw Druid. So let me show you how this build works. Whenever we go to attack, we're going to want to use our Earth Spike first. What Earth Spike is doing is it's making us human so that we can get all of our shape-shifting bonuses. And it's also casting Earth so that we get our resonance bonuses. This is also going to be your last resort source of spirit in case you run out, but you shouldn't run into that most of the time. If you're someone that's using Tybalt's Will, which most good players should be doing, then you'll want to dash before you attack. This is not only going to activate that 40% damage multiplier, but it's also going to recoup your spirit so that you have more to go with. So let me show you what it would look like if I was running through a Nightmare dungeon and I was about to attack some enemies. As I'm running in, I'm going to activate Blood Howl, and that's going to trigger our Vigilance passive for that 15% damage reduction. Then I'm going to dash to trigger Tybalt's Will, use one basic attack, and then start channeling. Let me show you how it looks. Now, if you're not using Tybalt's Will, the only difference there is you're not going to do the dash. Also, typically, you'd want to stay further away from the enemies because you can actually kill enemies from extremely far away. Now, for the most part, you probably won't use your companion abilities, but don't forget that you can increase your critical strike chance by using your Ravens. You can sick your Wolves on enemies, which most of the time I wouldn't bother with. And we can also immobilize enemies with Poison Creeper. That's going to allow us to get the Electric Shock passive more easily. Now, the reason we have so many companions is because of our Shepherd's aspect. We're getting 20% damage increase for every single companion we have. This ends up being a 180% damage multiplier because we're also using Stampede. On our amulet, we've got Retaliation, and this is going to be a huge damage multiplier because we're constantly increasing our Fortify whenever we use our Blood Howl. And you should be using this between every single group of enemies and sometimes multiple times in one fight. Not only will this top off your health, but you're getting 20 spirit and you're giving yourself that Vigilance passive. Now, when we're standing still, which we should be doing anytime we're channeling, we're not only getting the bonus of Inner Calm, but we're also getting the bonus of Bathe in Blood. That's the red circle on the ground, so make sure you stand in this all the time. And if you're doing Nightmare Dungeons, stay away from the Shadow Pulse because it's very confusing which is the Shadow Pulse and which is your Bathe in Blood. Now, you can kill all the bosses in the game without doing this, but if you really want to metagame, you can pull off your Lightning Dancer gloves and throw on your Fists of Fate. You'll notice that if I attack with these, the damage, right now, this looks about the same as normal, but if I keep rotating through, you can see the damage is less now, and the damage is now higher. So you can use this to your advantage to get huge damage numbers on bosses. So we've already gone over the skills and the skill rotations. So for the Spirit Boons, we've got Wariness, Scythe Talons, Avian Wrath, Bolster, and Overload. For our equipment, the only required unique is Tempest Roar, but I highly recommend if you have enough survivability, go with Tybalt's Will for the pants. It's going to give you that damage and spirit. For our chest armor, we're going Aspect of Might. On our gloves, we're going Lightning Dancer's Aspect. On our pants, we're going Vigorous. On our boots, we're going Exploiter's Aspect. On our weapon, we're going Shepherd's Aspect. Aspect of Retaliation on our amulet. Aspect of the Stampede on our ring. And on our other ring, we're going Aspect of Inner Calm. Don't forget that if you want to see detailed stats, you can go to the Mobilytics page, click on this little thing here, and you can see all of the stats on the items. You can even see those stats by hovering over the item and looking at gear stat priority under the item. An important element to not overlook is you really want that damage to close and damage to distant enemies on your weapon and on your rings. Not only is this an additive damage, but it's also a damage multiplier because of our Thunderstruck node. And that's the same reason why we max out our Territorial Glyph. For gems, we're running Emerald, Ruby, and Skull. Now, I personally ended up with Vulnerable on my two-handed weapon, and I like the fact that Emeralds work on bosses, but I only recommend these if you're using Exploit as one of the glyphs. You also have the option of running Fulminate instead of Exploit, and foregoing Vulnerable altogether. You're basically just going to swap a 20% damage multiplier for a 14% damage multiplier. And it ends up being fairly similar. For the accessories, I'm recommending Skulls, but make sure you look at your resistances, and if any of them are not max or near max, make sure you're putting that individual gem to max out that resistance. Once all your resistances are max or near max, you can put Skulls in to fill in the rest. For our Vampiric powers, we're doing Bathe in Blood, Metamorphosis, Feed the Coven, Hemomancy, and Sanguine Brace. Now, I already covered most of the details that are down in the bottom here, but don't forget I've got additional information here that might be useful to you. One point of note at the bottom here, Hunter Zenith can be used in place of Inner Calm. If you do that, you can swap your Blood Howl out for Debilitating Roar. This can be a really strong defensive option, and because of the nature of how we're doing the build, we actually get the offensive bonus from that as well. For a skill tree, we're running Earth Spike with Fierce Earth Spike. We're maxing out Lightning Storm and getting Primal Lightning Storm. We're going to max out Wild Impulses, and then we're going to move down. We're going to put 1 point in Blood Howl and Innate Blood Howl. We're going to max out Ancestral Fortitude and Vigilance, and make sure you pay attention to your resistances, because if you end up capped, you may not need all of your points for Ancestral Fortitude. Moving down, we've got the Companion Tree, where we're going to get 1 point in Wolves, 3 points in Nature's Reach, 1 point in Poison Creeper, 1 point in Ravens, and 1 point in Brutal Ravens. Moving down to our Wrath Tree, we're going to max out Bad Omen and Electric Shock, and we'll also be maxing out Envenom and putting 1 point in Toxic Claws. This allows us to poison enemies with storm skills because of our Tempest Roar. Moving down, we're not actually taking an ultimate in this build, and we're going to max out Defiance and Resonance. We'll also be maxing out Quick Shift and Heightened Senses. Finally, for our Keystone passive, we've got Ursine Strength. I did play around with Earth and Might in this build, but I didn't like it as much, and I felt like I wasn't proccing my Earth and Might consistently. For our Paragon Boards, on our starter tree, we're going to be going with Spirit. We're going to get all of our rare nodes there, and then we're going to move up. We're going to attach the Ancestral Guidance board, where we're going to get the legendary node for Ancestral Guidance. We're going to get a couple of rare nodes on our way up, and we're going to grab Fulminate in this board. Moving to the right, we're going to attach Thunderstruck, where we're going to get the legendary node, and we're going to be getting the Shapeshifter glyph. Moving up from here, we're going to be getting the Heightened Malice board, and Earth and Sky is going to be the glyph here. Then moving to the right, we're going to attach Constricting Tendrils, and we're going to be getting Territorial here. Finally, to the left above our Ancestral Guidance, we're going to be attaching the Lust for Carnage board and getting the legendary node, as well as putting Electrocution here. You will not be hitting your bonuses in Ferocity, Feral, or Nature's Will. The rest of the bonuses you should be able to hit without too much issue. Don't be afraid to move points around in places like this, where you could get Intelligence instead of Dex, or the other way around. You can also find spots like this, where you can take the Willpower and put it into Dex. And this is what it should look like when you're done. I hope you guys like the build. I'm going to be making a pass on all the builds leading up to AOZ. I'm also going to update the Paragon boards for every single build that I've put out when AOZ comes out. If you guys enjoy the content and the hard work, leave me a like, leave a comment, and join our Discord. But on that note, Daddy Druid out.